Our book of the month for January 2020 was India, a Sacred Geography, a thought provoking effort by the renowned author Diana Eck. This is one heck of a book with plenty of spiritual insights to absorb. They say it can take many years to know and see India. This book would be a great place to start that journey. A culmination of many spirited years of research. It may be viewed as a guidebook to understanding how the idea of a single nation emerged from ancient times. The author's pilgrimage to important sacred landscapes from the north to the south and her deep knowledge of history helped mold her narrative on how India's pre-modern sovereign identity came to be over the centuries. She examines how culture, myths, religions, sages, and their sacred verses contributed to a kind of unwavering connectedness that became India in time. A deeply fascinating read, educational, and a walk in the past with the best in class without leaving your desk. Our book of the month for February 2020 was The 40 Rules of Love by Turkish novelist Elif Shafak. This is a beautiful foreign fiction on love and destiny, God, spirituality, and Sufism. We get introduced to some enduring legacies and intellectual dynamism of famous Sufi thinkers from 800 years ago, such as Rumi and his spiritual companion, the Shams of Tabriz, and their luminous contribution to humanity. We are once again reminded how vast and complex the world of love is, as we know it today and as it was centuries ago, and how it always got to the very best, from the most saintly to the most sedentary in life. We must learn to accept the fact that love always wins and transforms in the end. This international bestseller does a favor to both the heart and mind more than words can tell. Our book of the month for March 2020 was The Palace of Illusions by novelist Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. A great epic retold from the eyes of one of its original central characters, a woman that is, the legendary Queen Draupadi, consort of the 5 Pandava brothers. Though fiction, the author has boldly attempted to perceive and narrate the trials and trepidations of a female heroine in the male-dominated world of gods, kings, and sages, with a sense of realism unseen in traditional literature. While the book may be just scraping the surface in terms of capturing the whole essence of the ancient epic, it seems to be a more humanized depiction of Draupadi's character, her bone-chilling experiences, her notions of dharma and karma, as she lives out her destiny in the tragedy-prone tale of Mahabharata. At a time when there was little record of any written history and knowledge passed on mostly through oral tradition, it was almost necessary to make this attempt anew at storytelling, however imaginative, as a source of information for the future. Those with a soft spot for incredible Indian mythology, a little bit of history, and freedom of expression, this one is for you. For April 2020, we make an exception in reviewing a special 2-part magazine publication by NGO Manthan titled GANDHARA I, published for the period July to September 2019, and GANDHARA Part 2, published for the period October to December 2019. These quarterly issues explore the vast geography and cultural vibrancy of ancient India, with a special focus on understanding the true identity of its then integrated northwestern frontiers, now falling in present-day Afghanistan and Pakistan. We are introduced to the cultural richness of classical era Gandhara and how it was once a prolific center of Buddhism and Buddhist art, the kingdom of early Kushan dynasty science, in order to impress upon the reader what a massive melting pot India was in antiquity. We also learn about the 16 Mahajanapads of BC period Bharatvarsh, which were the earliest kind of large benchmark states of India, which find mention in the Indian epic Mahabharata. We learn anew about the 2 former kingdoms of Kabulistan and Zabulistan, the rule of the Hindu Shahis and their beautiful bull and horseman coins, the linguistic connect between Sanskrit, Pashto, and Persian, the advent of Islam and the gradual transformation of Hindu-Buddhist Gandhara to modern-day Kandahar. The valor of Ranbal the ruler is fascinating, as is the story of the great linguist Panini. Throughout the two volumes, there are lessons of history, with added short Pashtun tales and other interesting facts worth a read. While the editing quality could improve, the content was simply king, a valuable record of a fragile, multi-religious past that should be stored in the World Digital Library. By the time we finished reading our book of the month for May 2020, titled Kadambari, we felt envy for all those who had utmost pleasure of reading the original story by the great Sanskrit prose writer Bana firsthand. Many centuries ago, that is. Believed to be one of the earliest known novels of the world, the deeply romantic fiction tale has a plot to reckon with. A love story involving good-hearted kings, beautiful princesses, divine souls, and most astonishingly, a speaking parrot, all of whose lives are karmically intertwined over multiple lifetimes. How the story meets its conclusion is enormous. Considering this was a 7th century masterpiece which took both the first author's lifetime and that of his son, Bhusana Bhatta's lifetime to complete, it was so full of rasa and realism it felt surreal. There is nothing ordinary about such an old work surviving this long and strong in the annals of time to finally reach our book club in the 21st century. We are grateful to Bana, the liberal, masterful storyteller, and the translator of this particular English version, Padmani Rajappa, for giving us something to cherish for years to come. Our book of the month for June 2020 is Fauja Singh's History of the Punjab, first volume, which achieves a certain distinction in history in dealing with the origins of Punjab from prehistoric times to the age of Ashoka. It is a brilliant contribution to improving our understanding of the rich past of India's north, its race movements and kingship. In ancient times, the Punjab as we know it did not exist, and in fact was spread across much larger boundaries from the Himalayas to the west of the river Indus. The region was an amalgamation of different cultures, monarchies, and oligarchies, a rather popular invasion point by virtue of being a gateway to the west. Unpredictably in-depth overall, particularly enlightening were the chapters dealing with the Macedonian invasion by Alexander, followed by the Mauryan rule. The author also generously explores the existence of the republican states or independent tribes in ancient Punjab, known as the Mahajanapadas, which also find mention in India's two famous epics, and which played a major role in the Great Mahabharata War. The book also introduces the idea of Aryan settlements in the Punjab much before all else, citing evidence from Rig Veda and archaeological discoveries. For fans of history and scholars alike, this book is an original starting point to understanding our country's great socio-religious and geographic transformation in ancient times, for branching out further into individual specialties. For July 2020, we read an outstanding book, The Crown, the fourth part of a historical romance, Ponniyin Selvan, written by the late Tamil writer Kalki Krishnamurthy and translated by C.V. Karthik Narayanan. The story of Ponniyin Selvan, meaning son of Ponni or son of Kaveri, was inspired by the history and valor of the famous Chola dynasty kings, particularly Raja Chola I, the second son of the king Sundara Chozar. In this Game of Thrones, abundant with heroism and self-sacrifice, both the biological sons of Sundara Chozar, the crown prince and eldest son Aditya Karikalar, and his younger brother Arulmozi Varma, aka Ponniyin Selvan, are portrayed as two brave princes earning great fame from their various conquests and deeply loved by their people. And yet, against popular demand, in a surprise twist, the intended heir to the throne is neither of the valorous princes, but a less popular shy candidate named Madhurantaka, who ironically preferred to renounce the world and live in constant prayer than rule. The plot thickens unpredictably, thanks to the incorporation of femme fatale characters in the story, who are capable of changing any man's destiny. While all the volumes are collectibles and must-reads, this one delivers a brilliant punch for the readers. A fine introduction to Tamil literature's lasting legacy and the immortality of the Chola Empire. For August 2020, we enjoyed reading YUGANTA, The End of an Epoch, a book written by award-winning author Irawati Karve. In her bold intellectual analysis of the massive epic Mahabharata, the author does her bit as a kind of modern Sutta she describes in her book, that is, the original storytellers and preservers of this great epic. Divided into 11 chapters, the book explores the myth versus reality of key characters of the ancient story that appeal to the author, each an eye-opener. Whilst the entire book is a revelation, the chapters on Karna, Lord Krishna, and the significance of the word Vasudeva as it applies to Lord Krishna, and the last chapter are mind-bending. Interestingly, the author does not explore the popular name of Krishna as Vasudeva from a patronymic standpoint, but more from a divinity viewpoint, going further to suggest that it may be how a once great man who evolved as a god over several centuries to present day wanted to be revered. Though the evaluation of Vedic-era women is difficult, the chapters on the royal women explore their roles in keeping their families together, their transformations, and the shared tragedy of their lives. One interesting character which jumped at us, with no specific chapter dedicated to him, is that of one of the three chief narrators of Mahabharata, known as Sage Vaisampayana. Perhaps some scholar on Indian story traditions will pick this one up as a thesis. The author dates the earliest known Mahabharata manuscript to the 8th or 9th century. And we have come across the name of Vaisampayana before in one of our earlier book reviews dating back to May 2020. That is in the ancient Sanskrit writer Bana's KADAMBARI, a 7th century masterpiece predating the earliest known Mahabharata log, whose effects we continue to feel. In Bana's treatise, Vaisampayana is also the narrator of a Kshatriya story, reborn as a storytelling parrot who remembers his previous birth. The character found in both Mahabharata and Bana's ancient literature deserves more introspection. For September 2020, we picked up an Old English masterpiece collection of 17th century poems by English lyric poet Robert Herrick titled Hesperides, or Works Both Human and Divine. A major work, this book is a great collection of both sensual and spiritual poetic sayings delightful to the mind. To the Virgins to Make Much of Time is a famous example of this romantic writings, and one other, The End, of his more epigrammatic style. A good read for both the fall and winter seasons by the fireplace. For October 2020, we found some divine wisdom lovingly imparted by Lebanese author Mikhail Naima in his 1948 book titled The Book of MIRDAD. Largely allegorical, the book is a theological fiction centered on the teachings of a character called MIRDAD, who is the abbot of a monastery believed to be standing where Noah's Ark once came to rest after the flood. Deeply philosophical and prophetic, using simple, heartfelt language to send its message of love and inner pilgrimage, the book perhaps represents the author's finest work in which he gives us his all. A great read in a difficult year of existential angst. The message is to believe, synchronize with the universe, and trust your journey. For November 2020, we selected the well-known late Punjabi historian Fauja Singh's book titled MAHARAJA RANJIT Singh, which is a gift to his fandom. The book is an in-depth examination of the political, social, and economic aspects of the great Maharaja's rule. We learn about some of the most interesting and under-researched themes of how the late emperor ruled his subjects, the forts built or conquered by him in pre-partition Punjab, relations of the Lahore Darbar with other royal houses, both Sikh and non-Sikh, including the hill states, and how he created an independent empire spread over roughly 140,000 square miles through a collection of essays authored by different eminent personalities. This is a rare book that rekindled our imagination about the legendary Lion of Punjab, who was voted greatest leader of all time in a poll conducted by BBC World Histories magazine. And finally, for the month of December 2020 is a book for all ages by author Nandini Sengupta titled The Blue Horse. The book brings together lovely short stories revolving around some of the khas pets of legendary royals of history. We learn about Akbar's favorite cheetah Saman Manik, to Rani Lakshmi Bai's Badal, to great Greek ruler Alexander's Paratus, to Maharana Pratap's extraordinary horse Chetak. We hear it from the horse's mouth literally, little facts mixed with some imagination, unlike anything one may have read. A wonderful tea time or family table conversation book, this is a must-have for the home library. And with that, we conclude this presentation. Thank you for watching.